Welcome to Scam Factories, a special series from The Conversation Weekly taking you inside Southeast Asia's brutal scamming compounds. We're going to jump straight into this one.
Hi! I'm Mark. I'm Leila.
It's a hot day in mid-June in the bustling morning traffic of Phnom Penh in Cambodia. Our producer, Leila Goldstein, is piling into a car with three researchers, Mark, Ling and Ivan. They're headed south into Can Dao province towards a village called Chrey Thom on the border with Vietnam. On one side of the highway is a river, the other side is rice fields. Mark is driving. He says the village is known for a smattering of casinos and its large compounds.
Last time we were there, the town was actually pretty quiet, but we were told that was largely because people are no longer really allowed to come and go from those compounds. So there's a fair number of Chinese there, but also a lot of Vietnamese, Taiwanese, South Asians, people from India, Bangladesh, Nepal, that are not allowed to leave those compounds, even to get food and things like that.
You heard that right. These people are locked in, unable to leave. For Ling, it's her first time going to Chrey Thom. She's particularly interested in one compound there called Golden Fortune Casino.
The reason we choose this place is just within the last 1 month or even 3 weeks, we got 5 cases from Chrey Thom and from the same compound. 1 female, 1 minor, 3 male.
Ling has heard about these cases because she's involved with a rescue group that helps people trying to escape these compounds.
We did get the information from the parents and they showed us the evidence of their getting threatened and then beaten and also asking for ransom. So that's a common strategy they use in the compound. If they refuse to walk, they will beat you up and then they record it and send to your parents or like any people concerned about you and ask for like 3,000 or 5,000 and saying that if you give us the money, we'll release the person.
After a 2-hour drive, they arrive in Chrey Thom. The front entrance of Golden Fortune Casino comes up on the right-hand side of the main road. The sign is decorated with figures of cards and dice.
So that's like the front-facing part of it, and it does have a casino license. But
head southwest.
But you can see it's not really, it doesn't look like a public casino.
Mark steers the car around the corner onto a dirt road to the side of the casino complex, and Ivan points out something strange.
You see the barbed wire? It stretches all the way back here, right? And more. 40 times.
I see the barred windows.
Look at that. Wow. Look at the walls with the barbed wire behind the buildings where with these houses. These are normal houses where local people live. Right behind you see this wall with the barbed wire, and behind you see these buildings like dormitories or whatever with the barred windows. You see that?
They always have laundry hanging from the windows because that's where they live and work in the same place.
Yeah, that's usually how you know if a compound is occupied, and that's what we usually look for, right? And there were reports of torture inside this one, right?
Yeah. Pretty bad reports, yeah.
The complex stretches back nearly half a kilometre, and there are lots of guards around the gate.
We have been checking the map a lot and then counting how many buildings are there and then see the photos from the survivors. But then I always imagine it's like smaller than what we just saw. Every time I go to this kind of like places and I see the compound size and then imagine the number of people inside, it's just still scare me.
What they're looking at is an online scam compound. Behind these walls and barbed wire, and in hundreds of other compounds like this elsewhere in Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos, and the Philippines, people are working in slave-like conditions, many of them tricked into being there. They're forced to defraud people all over the world. The UNHCR estimates the total number of people forced into criminality in this way in Southeast Asia may be upwards of 200,000. these figures are strongly contested by the region's governments. And given the nature of the industry, it's impossible to know exactly how many people have been trafficked to these sites. But the evidence emerging suggests it's many thousands. More reports are emerging of people caught up in these operations. In early January this year, a Chinese actor was freed after being trafficked to a scam compound in Myanmar via Thailand. His rescue made headlines around the world and focused attention on those people still trapped inside. Our three guides, Ivan, Ling, and Mark, have spent the past few years researching the industry from Cambodia. Ivan Franceschini, who's originally from Italy, is a lecturer at the Asia Institute at the University of Melbourne in Australia, and he's an expert on Chinese labour issues.
I met Mark several years ago here in Phnom Penh. He's been based here for many years, even longer than I have.
Mark Bow is an independent researcher who also consults for NGOs in the region.
He was already starting to look into this kind of sector. And Ling, that's an interesting story because I met Ling 2 years ago. So I was at this cafe here in Phnom Penh, and I was talking to a friend about my plans to research the industry, and she overheard me talking about my plans with this friend, and so she came to introduce herself.
At that time, Ling Li was working for the University of Liverpool in the UK on a project on modern slavery and human trafficking. Today, she's a PhD candidate at Foscari University of Venice in Italy, researching how technology facilitates modern slavery.
So completely by chance, we got to know each other. And then the three of us, we realized that our expertise and our interests are very complementary. And so we started working together until we got to work on this book.
Ivan, Ling, and Mark have done extensive research on Southeast Asia's scam compounds and are about to publish a book on the industry. They'll be our guides for this series. Over 3 episodes, we'll uncover how these scam compounds operate, what happens to the people inside them, and what can be done to stop the industry from ruining even more lives. I'm Gemma Ware from The Conversation, and this is No Skills Required, Episode 1 of Scam Factories. We're also running a series of articles written by the researchers alongside this podcast, which is published by my colleagues at The Conversation in Australia. You can find that on theconversation.com.
My first time to hear about it was through a friend of mine, and he told me some company was looking for IT guys, like to manage their data, and it was just a simple contract, 6-month contract, and I went for it.
This is a man we're calling George. It's a pseudonym we're using to protect his identity. He's from Uganda in East Africa, and he grew up there in the capital, Kampala.
I studied in Kampala and high school, and also I did also diploma in accounting and finance. At university, I did it in India. I studied Bachelor of Science in Computer Science.
After his studies, George returned to Kampala and set himself up as a freelancer.
Doing networking and all the IT stuff, some people would just call me to fix their systems, configure their routers, things like that. Then after COVID, everything became slow and I had to move. I went to Dubai.
But a job he thought he'd secured before he went to Dubai fell through, and he found himself hustling for work.
Doing manual jobs, small jobs, odd jobs, simple jobs. You get paid cash, do a job and get paid instant. Because I had expenses to meet, had a visa to renew every 3 months, and also had accommodation to pay for. So that means I had to keep moving.
It was in Dubai in around August 2022 that George first heard about a new job opportunity in Laos in Southeast Asia from a Ugandan friend also working in Dubai. His friend introduced him to an Asian woman to find out more.
We were talking about data management, back-end data managing. That's the job we had agreed upon. And with a good salary, plus allowances and commissions. And I was supposed to do it for 6 months. The company checked out. Online, by that time, it existed. Seemed like a good job at first.
Things moved quickly. After a few days, George had a visa sorted for Laos and his ticket was paid for. At first, everything was fine.
I was picked up from Vientiane airport in Laos and taken to a hotel where I spent the night. Then the next day, I took another flight to the Golden Triangle. That's in Tom Phong district, near the border of Myanmar and Thailand.
The Golden Triangle is a mountainous region where the borders of Myanmar, Thailand, and Laos meet. Though it's popular with tourists on the Thai and Laos side, it's also notorious for drug cartels and opium production. After a few days in COVID quarantine, George finally made it to the company where he was meant to be working.
That's when everything started changing.
Until now, everything had been agreed to verbally, but when he arrived, he was handed a paper contract to sign.
It really was far, far different from what I expected, like what I talked about. I told them no, I wasn't going to work, and that's when they told me I had to pay them 16,000 RMB.
That's a little over $2,200. They'd taken his phone when he got there and his passport, saying they'd apply for a new visa for him. George was trapped.
I never had the money, so I didn't agree, but I had no option apart from working. So I remained there.
It didn't take George long to realise what he was being asked to do. Scams.
They'd give you a script and tell you, you'll get to know immediately what you have to do.
There's another one on the left here. You can see the windows covered up.
Back in Chrey Thom, Cambodia, our researchers Mark, Ling and Ivan and our producer Leila continued down the road, seeing more compounds on either side.
Next to like traditional Cambodian countryside with the buffalo, the rice field.
You see there's small shops with vans that they used to move people, clearly.
The one on the right that's coming up is it looks about 50% built, but it's active. I've seen people talking about it on different Telegram groups. You can see people, when you get close, this one has quite heavy security, but you can see people coming and going. And there's another one on the left, looks like it's going up in the early stages.
So that would be the fourth one on this street.
Yep.
Look at that. You see, at every corner there is a booth with a guard.
Yep.
Inside the compound.
Yeah, this one
the
seems
gate is-
very secure.
The gate is closing after a car just went in.
On this one, you can see on the sign it's got the company name. It's pretty common for the companies that build these to have property management in their name. So they build it and they manage the property. They rent out spaces to different scam operators or online gambling operators inside.
The property manager here, some of them, they have the function of monitoring the companies inside. So depends on how brutal they want to be. So some of the property managers say like, okay, we allow scam inside, but then we don't allow heavy beating inside. So the people who is executed the punishment are actually hired by the property manager, so they can control the brutalness inside. Yeah.
So we're passing another construction site. It's like further back, like in the fields. This is still super under construction, but how can you tell, I guess, as a researcher and someone knowledgeable, like that this is going to be a scam compound?
I guess for this one, it's the location, really. We've not come far away from the town, but this used to be rice fields. If it was going to be a casino, casinos are usually on the main road. I can't imagine what that would be for. A building of that size in the middle of the fields, like next to this coconut plantation and the rice field and everything. Oh, we're coming to the border, so I'm going to have to turn around. Yeah.
The group turns round and then they drive to the town's relatively quiet downtown area where workers drive by on motorbikes on their way to lunch at small stands on either side of the street.
It's a pretty big casino on the corner on the left.
Everywhere they look, there are shops and businesses catering for non-Cambodians.
That one passing by, they say they sell SIM card, Chinese SIM card. Why you need a Chinese SIM card? Yeah. 选非会习. Look at that. It's called like take up your mistress glove. This one's in Chinese.
According to a 2023 report from the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, people from at least 40 nationalities are known to have been trapped in Southeast Asia's scam compounds. Most have ended up there because they're desperate to find a job. There's no typical profile. It can depend on where people are from and the way they're recruited. Those who come from China, Malaysia, and Indonesia tend to have limited education, and it's often the first time they've gone abroad. Others, such as those from African countries, like George, can be well educated with bachelor's degrees. Here's Ivan again.
You find these job ads on many job recruitment websites, legitimate ones. You can find them on social media, Telegram, online, on WeChat, QQ. These are the last one. WeChat and QQ are Chinese ones. And these are quite generic ads. In many cases, they don't specify the type of work. They just promise high salaries, they promise bonuses, they promise promotion opportunities. And sometimes they even offer like a paid flight or visa or accommodation and all sorts of perks. It is mostly tech-related jobs that require very basic skills. So they are in the IT industry, but at the same time, they just require that you are able to type. It's not a high-level job ever. They emphasize this kind of ads that the experience is not a must. You have this complete discrepancy between the offer, the conditions that are offered, and then the kind of job that is required, which is also the way you can recognize that this is most likely a trick.
Now, some people do know that they're entering into a scam operation.
In some cases, it works out as they think. They might make money and they might reach an agreement with their boss, but in many others, they just enter willingly. They think they can manage the situation, they think they can handle it, and then they find themselves trapped. They just realize that their passport is taken away, they realize that they're not making any money, they realize that they have contracts that actually put them in debt of these gangsters, and then they find themselves stuck. And these people are in a really bad situation. Like, that is what makes it complicated, right?
Yeah.
This type of situation in which people enter willingly and then they get trapped is what is very morally ambiguous and makes everything complicated, because you have people who actively and knowingly engage in crime and then they themselves become victims. So that's quite ambiguous and quite complicated.
There are other ways people can end up in one of these compounds. In some towns in Cambodia, notorious for the scam industry, people have been kidnapped directly from the street.
Just getting outright snatched from the street. Or you meet an acquaintance, you meet him or her for coffee, and then you just get loaded on a van on the way out and brought to a compound. You have a debt that you haven't paid, someone sells you the compound to get the money to repay the debt.
Another recruitment method is through brokers.
These people are paid by the scam operations to recruit people. So in some cases, they just pretend, they pose as people. They're professional brokers. They create identities, they target people online, they create bonds, they pretend to be your friend or an attractive person on a dating app, or they kind of approach you even on online video games. And they slowly build up trust, and in the end, they offer you an opportunity that you cannot refuse.
In these cases, the money the scam operation pays to the broker for recruitment gets added to the debt of the person being tricked. But not all of these brokers are professional.
We know a lot of brokers who just know about the industry, and so they just see an easy opportunity to make money by selling their friends, their family sometimes, and then they just get a commission, they get some money for tricking the people in their social circle, which is unbelievable, but it happens.
Hello?
Hello.
There we go. As you know, we're speaking with Ling. It's June 2024, and I'm on a Zoom call with a woman we'll call Li. Li isn't her real name. She wants to remain anonymous for her safety. She's Malaysian, and she spoke to me in Chinese with the help of our translator, Hui.
我今年34岁，然后我的职业是 sales executive，然后
So my name is Li. I'm 34 years old. I work as a sales person, but also doing some part-time job as events planner.
Li lived in Kuala Lumpur, but she used to travel a lot to organise various events and exhibitions. So she thought little of it when, in September 2023, a friend of hers, who also worked in event planning, mentioned a potential job organising an exhibition on the Malaysian island of Penang.
其实就因为我们是认识10多年的朋友嘛，然后我们就一起飞到。
So I have been knowing my friend, this person, for more than 10 years.
一个地方槟城 ，Penang，然后我就去到 Penang，然后。
And we went to Penang. It's a major city in Malaysia. But we had to sign the contract in Bangkok because the company's headquarters is in Bangkok.
Her friend also asked her to help buy some goods in Thailand that they could sell once they got back to Malaysia. Lee arrived in Bangkok, and the next day the company sent a car to collect her to sign the contract.
对，因为怎么说，就是一直以来之前也有合作嘛。
I was excited because we have been working together for a long time, and before that never happened. So I trusted her.
Lee expected the car journey to take about an hour.
然后我看时间其实就超过1个多小时了，我就觉得怪怪。
When we were on the car and it took more than 1 hour, and I started to feel a little bit weird. But I didn't think that much. I told myself maybe it's just they made a detour or they headed to a wrong way. But
持枪的人上车了，但是不是军方的人。
on our way to the compound, there are people carrying gun got on our car.
Lee later realised that the car had driven them across the border into Myanmar to a place called Mariwany, notorious for its scam compounds. And they were being escorted by what she believes were the Myanmar military. And so what happened when you got to the compound in Myanmar?
就是你去到那个诈骗营地以后发生了些什么事情？
其实他们一开始，他们去到那个诈骗营地，他不会叫你。
When we first arrived there, they didn't ask us to work, actually. They asked us to give them money first.
就是招揽其他人，就是叫你进行诈骗其他人这样。
And if we cannot pay it, they force us to become part of the scam to scam other people.
When she arrived, her passport was taken, and she was asked for the equivalent of $10,000 US.
就是觉得很无奈吧。然后我其实有在。
So I felt helpless. I asked them if they can lower the money so that I can get back to my country.
And so when you didn't give them money, what kind of work were you being asked to do?
他们没有让你给钱，然后接下来他们让你做的什么？
就是有进行类似人力资源的，就是招聘人员
The
的。
scan compound actually has a lot of different departments. There are departments like a HR department, which is actually recruiting people or scamming other people to come to this compound.
Other departments were focused on specific types of scams. For example, one was focused on scamming older American single women.
要进行诈骗那种中国女生，就是单身的人士这样子。
And my department asked me to scam Chinese single women.
Some of these women were rich, but others were not. And they were targeted in romance scams done by text message or on dating apps using fake phone numbers and identities. It was all laid out in scripts, explaining how to pretend to be a sought-after partner. One popular script, Lee remembers, was how to impersonate being a military officer.
对，他们就是会通过一种怎么说？
I played the role of the military man because military man is among those very popular to Chinese single ladies.
可能交往。
The script made out that the man had been married to a woman who was also a soldier, but that she'd had an accident and then died. So he was left alone with a young daughter and was looking for a new partner to build a family together. Photos of a girl who could have been the soldier's daughter were scraped off other social media sites, and the scammers contacted potential targets on dating apps. If they got hooked, the next step would be a video call.
时候，他们可以进行视讯通话，然后那个视讯的通话。
We can do a video call in the ordinary office, but in this video call, we can fake ourselves as a military person because of the AI technology.
这样被诈骗了。
Lee says she felt desperately sorry for the girls who were being tricked, many of whom were very poor, but she says she felt very helpless. Romance scams, such as the ones that Lee's compound was focusing on, are just one of a variety of different techniques used by scammers to extort money from people. Sometimes these scams fall into the category of what's called pig butchering. Here's Mark Bow, the independent researcher who we heard earlier, driving the car in Cambodia.
The basic principles are that the scammers will target people. Then they'll build up a relationship with that person. It might be a romantic relationship, but not necessarily. And then as they build that relationship, then they start to talk about how they've been successful in some type of investment usually, and kind of lure their target into doing the same kind of investment. But it's all a sham. They'll direct them to a website or an app that looks legitimate, and they can see their balance going up and down and so on. And they think they're actually investing on a legit cryptocurrency or some other kind of asset like foreign exchange or gold or whatever. So it's kind of a long process, involves a certain amount of grooming to get people to that point where they're ready to invest. They'll give them some early payout to encourage them, and then as they get more confident, encourage them to invest larger amounts until the point that they get suspicious, they want to cash out, and then they'll abandon them and the person will realize that the money's gone.
A variation on this is known in Chinese as fish butchering, or shayupan, also called a task scam.
People are contacted or they reply to an ad for online work where you're doing things like boosting site traffic or making fake reviews for products online. But they end up in a system that resembles kind of more traditional multi-level marketing type scams where they'll do these tasks, they'll accumulate a certain amount of commission, and they end up trapped in this kind of loop where there's this promise of higher commissions, but to get those commissions, you always have to commit more cash. And then when they get suspicious and they want to get out, then they lose the money.
Some of these scams can take months and months of grooming, particularly for high-value targets. It's a long-term investment on the part of the scammers to build a relationship.
They take it slow because the potential rewards can be huge. So sometimes it does go on for a long, long time, which increases the trauma that the victim experiences at the end because they think that they have a serious, deep relationship with this person, and then in the end they realize that they've just taken everything they've got. So I think it's a particularly cruel technique.
Other scammers focus instead on impersonating somebody from law enforcement.
To begin with, the reports that we saw, they were mostly targeting Chinese nationals or Chinese overseas, very often Chinese students overseas. So the victim will get a call from someone who says they're a police officer. They'll tell them that their bank account or their ID card or their phone number has been connected to some type of financial crime, potentially money laundering or some drug deal or something like that. And they'll tell them at the beginning, like, you are strictly not allowed to discuss this with anyone, not discuss it with your family. So they put fear in them, then they isolate them. Then the so-called police officer will say, I'm going to transfer you to our financial investigations department. And then they'll call, sometimes they'll have a video call with someone wearing a uniform that looks like they're in an office. And they'll tell them how serious the crime that they're connected to is. And they'll convince them to transfer contents of their bank accounts into what they call like a third account while they investigate.
Once that's happened, the scammers try various other methods to extract more and more money from the victim.
It's isolating people, targeting young people, students who are overseas. I think it's been a very effective approach, and you can see all over the world there are warnings from different police forces, different universities warning students, sometimes specifically warning Chinese students to be aware of this scam and not to get drawn into it.
There are reports of similar scams affecting other nationalities too. Mark's seen reports from Thailand where people are getting calls to say there's a package with their name and address on it that contains drugs, and then this is used as a threat to extract money from the victim. Then there's the fake kidnapping type of scam, which is a pretty strange and sinister extension of that law enforcement impersonation. This targets people who've already handed over money because they've been told they're connected to a crime.
I've seen reports where they've been told that they need to do some tasks for the police. There was one case, I think, from Singapore where the targets were told, we need you to help us with some of our anti-scam promotional work. So we want you to go to a hotel and pretend that you've been kidnapped and film it and send us the videos. And so they did that. And then those videos were sent to those young men's parents and used to extract a ransom, saying that they'd kidnapped them and they'd harm them unless a ransom was paid, but they were never actually kidnapped.
There are also people who've actually been kidnapped, aren't there? So it does go into violence too.
Yeah, there's been several cases. There was one in Cambodia a few years ago now. The Chinese woman who was in New Zealand studying, and she was somehow lured to Cambodia, and then from the airport she was taken to Barbed, which is on the border with Vietnam, and she was quite badly tortured, and it was videoed. They cut off her thumb and tasered her on the video, and then used that video to try and extract her ransom, but the police intervened before the ransom was paid and she was rescued. A couple of people were arrested, but I think most of them got away.
In the second episode of Scam Factories, we find out what happens to people inside the scam compounds, where violence or the threat of it is commonplace.
They try all kinds of coercive maneuvers, using fire extinguisher to try hit me, to scare me, using plastic bag over my head to suffocate me.
The killing is always there. We got testimonies saying that they saw people get killed in front of them.
It takes you back the edges of slave trade in Africa. Like, it was hard to believe when someone tells you I own you.
And we hear how the industry continues to operate in plain sight in Southeast Asia.
Several operations have now been established and developed in the region that are basically moving billions of dollars a year.
They exist because they can count on the protection of local elites.
The Conversation contacted Golden Fortune Resorts World, which owns Golden Fortune Casino in Chrey Thom, as well as the other companies mentioned in this series, for a comment. We did not receive a response from any of them. You've been listening to Surviving Asia's Scam Compounds from The Conversation Weekly. This episode was written and produced by me, Gemma Ware, with help from Katie Flood and Men Mariwany. Leila Goldstein was our producer in Cambodia. Halima Athumani recorded for us in Uganda, and Hui Lin helped us with Chinese translation. Sound design was by Michelle Macklem. Editing help from Ashlynee McGhee and Justin Bergman from The Conversation in Australia. Justin also edited the print version of this project, and Matt Garrow worked on the graphical elements of the story. You can find links to those stories in our show notes. The Conversation is a not-for-profit news organisation. If you value what we do, please consider donating by going to donate.theconversation.com.